So shall I present now?
Yeah,
Okay. You can hear me fine, right?
yes, I can.
All right. Okay. Can you see the presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay. So welcome to today's lecture on ecology and environment, and thank you for joining me today. Today's module is on energy and environment. My name is Gautam. I am a Prime Minister's Research Fellow from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So today's lecture will be on biofuels. So what are biofuels? Biofuels are fuels that are produced from biomass, that is plant or animal or organic matter essentially. So organic matter can be either crops, or it could be crop residues, or it could be something completely different like algae. So we have three generations of biofuels: the first generation, the second generation, and the third generation. So these crop residues can be of two types, primary and secondary. Primary residues are obtained uh, primary residues are obtained during the harvest of the crop itself, for example rice straw and so on. And secondary residues are obtained after further processing of the crop. For example, you have your sugar cane, you remove the juice, and what you have left is called the bagasse. So that is a secondary residue. And advanced biofuels or second generation biofuels are produced from these primary and secondary residues. There are various production pathways for these biofuels. It could be either biochemical, for example fermentation, or anaerobic digestion, and or thermochemical methods. Thermochemical means like gasification or pyrolysis. So there are liquid biofuels and gaseous biofuels. For example, you have methanol, biodiesel, ethanol, and in gaseous you have hydrogen and biogas. So why do we need biofuels? Why are we talking about biofuels here? If you look at the India's final energy consumption in the year 2018, you can see that around 600 million tons of oil equivalent was consumed, out of which 17% was consumed by transport. So in that 17%, that is 103 million ton of oil equivalent, about 97% came from fossil fuels, and only about 1% came from renewables. So because of all this, the transport sector emissions in India is the third largest after USA and China. So we need to mitigate the carbon emissions, right? So so as we just spoke about the fossil fuel dependency, not only should we mitigate the carbon emissions, we should also reduce the import bill. So we are importing crude oil from many countries, and the bill in 2021 was 139 billion US dollars. That is around 10 lakh crore rupees. So and the total imported quantity was upwards of 200 million tons. Okay, and we had a total petrol consumption of 30 million tons, which is touted to increase to 35 by the year 2025, and diesel consumption was about 76 million tons. Okay, so there was a downward trend in 2020 because of the pandemic, but in general it shows an upward trend. So there are representative concentration pathways. Okay, the intergovernmental panel for climate change, they came up with these pathways wherein you can, just a second. Hi, Ankita, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello, Gautam. I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I had started the presentation, but I'll just redo it. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. All right.
Okay, okay, all right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You can see the presentation mode, right?
Yes, yes, it is visible.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to today's lecture on ecology and environment. The module is on energy and environment, and my name is Gautam. I'm a Prime Minister's Research Fellow from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Right. Today's lecture will be on biofuels. What are biofuels? Biofuels are those fuels that are produced from biomass. Biomass means some plant or animal or organic matter basically. They could be either crops or crop residues or a special kind of biomass like algae and so on. So there are three generations of biofuels. Uh, Agricultural residues or crop residues can be of two types: primary residues, which are obtained from the field during the harvest, for example rice straw and so on. While harvesting the crop you get this residue. And the secondary residues are obtained during processing. For example, you have rice husk, which is obtained after processing of the paddy. So advanced biofuels are produced from these residues, both primary and secondary, through different methods. For example, you have biochemical with fermentation and anaerobic digestion, or thermochemical using pyrolysis and gasification. There are liquid as well as gaseous biofuels. So why are we talking about biofuels here? What is the need for biofuels here? So if you look at India's final energy consumption, it was around 600 million tons of oil equivalent in the year 2018, of which 17% was contributed by transport sector. So, and in that 103 million ton of oil equivalent, about 97% came from fossil fuels and only 1% came from renewables. So, as a result of all that, India's carbon emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions were around zero point 0.3 gigatons, which was third largest after USA and China in the year 2018. So, not only should we talk about the carbon emissions, we also need to talk about uh, the import bill for the crude oil, right? Which was around 139 billion US dollars. That is around 10 lakh crore rupees in 2021. So the import is upwards of 200 million tons of crude oil each year. So the petrol and diesel consumption, like petrol consumption was around 30 million tons and diesel was about 76 million tons. And the petrol consumption is touted to increase to about 35 million tons by the year 2025. So there is a decreasing trend in 2020 because of the pandemic, but in general it is increasing. So there are the intergovernmental panel for climate change came up with some pathways through which we can reduce the temperature rise of our planet. Okay, so they are targeting around 1.5 degrees Celsius, less than 2 degrees Celsius. So from from the industrial revolution until now, the planet has warmed and it is considerably warming up even further. So we need to limit this to less than 2 degrees Celsius. But if you see all these pathways, okay, this is the primary energy use by source. Let's look at this pathway, RCP 8.5, okay, which is heavily dependent on coal, like you can see here, and the others are not so much. So what happens is, in this case, the planet will warm up uh, by about 4.5 degrees Celsius, and the consequences can be catastrophic for our climate and for our future in general. So what we need to do is we need to limit it to 2 degrees Celsius, right? So we need to go for RCP 2.6, which is heavy on bioenergy, and coal is quite subdued here. So this is business as usual. So coal is used for electricity production and many such uses. Whereas this is the target where we need to target using bioenergy as much as possible. So to achieve climate, or to uh, achieve these targets, India has some commitment towards global climate action. Okay, that is to reduce the emissions intensity of of its GDP by 33 to 35% from 2005 level by the year 2030. Okay, and to achieve this, there are these are 3 points that are applicable only to the transport sector. That is promoting renewable energy and alternative fuels in overall fuel mix, reducing emissions from transport sector, and promoting energy efficiency in all sectors like industry, transportation, buildings, and appliances. So when we look at the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions for vehicles in India, we can see that it is around the range of 200 to 320 gram of carbon dioxide per kilometer. Okay, and that includes fuel consumption, production, manufacture, and maintenance. And about 2/3 of it is fuel consumption, that is from your tank, whatever you're burning, and your tailpipe emissions, that is about 2/3 of the total carbon emissions. So this is where we have to target, and this is where biofuels come into picture. So let's look at a couple of questions now. First, what does the 8.5 in RCP 8.5 stand for? So essentially, this RCP is representative concentration pathway, and the 8.5 is measured in watt per meter squared. That is the amount of energy that is released into the atmosphere due to various activities or due to various factors, due to which our planet is either warming or cooling. And this 8.5 watt per meter squared is called radiative forcing. This 2.6, 4.5, 6, and 8.5, that is called radiative forcing, and that is measured in watt per meter square. So the second question, so we have an ethanol blending program, okay, where the government has envisaged a 20% blend of bioethanol by the year 2025. So the estimated consumption of petrol is about 35 million tons, as we saw in one of the slides. So calculate the amount of ethanol needed to be produced to satisfy this demand. Okay. So how do you go about this? First is you calculate the amount of petrol in kg. You are given in tons, right? In million tons. So multiply by 10 power 6 tons, and multiply by 1000 kilograms per ton. You will get it in kg, right? Then calculate the amount of petrol in liter. So you have the mass, you divide it by the density, then you will get the volume of petrol in meter cube. You multiply that by 1000, that is 1000 liters in 1 meter cube. You will get this in liters, the amount of petrol required in liters. Then the amount of ethanol required is just 20% of that, which comes out to around around 875 crore liters. So much ethanol is required to fulfill that 20% blend by the year 2025. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please you can ask now. Any questions? All right.
No.
Okay. So if there are no questions, I think we can disperse, right?